Welcome to today's episode of the It's Been Said podcast. I'm your host, SAI Executive Director Lisa Remy. On this show, we dive into conversations about leadership, all in support of SAI's mission to encourage, develop, and empower Iowa's educational leaders and learners. Today, we're diving into a topic that sits right at the intersection of business, education, and workforce readiness. The Iowa Business Council's newly released professional proficiencies. These 4 proficiencies, communication and social engagement, organizational and service mindset, resiliency and grit, and tolerance for ambiguity and change, represent the skills employers consistently say are essential for success in the modern workplace. We'll talk about why these proficiencies matter now more than ever, how they connect to Iowa's workforce needs, and how both education leaders and business leaders can work together to help students and employees develop them in meaningful ways. Our guest today, Joe Murphy, Iowa Business Council President, brings deep insight into this work and will help us unpack what these proficiencies mean, how they were identified, and what opportunities they create for the future of Iowa. Welcome, Joe.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. So before we dive into our questions, tell our listeners a little bit about the Iowa Business Council.
Absolutely. So the Business Council was founded in 1985. That was 40 years ago, and in the midst of the farm crisis here in our state and the Midwest more broadly. And our founding members came together as the largest companies in the state of Iowa with really one mission, and that's to serve as a catalyst for economic growth and opportunity across every single county in the state of Iowa for every single business in Iowa individual. It was really about uplifting the economy, making sure that something like the farm crisis never happened again, as opposed to, increasing profit margins for Iowa's largest companies. It was about how can we scale together opportunities for the future, and that was our founding mission, and that's something that is true today. So you can almost think of us as a mini think tank. We have, 3 pillars, and that'd be, global thought leadership, explaining things like we are today, our research component, which we have a strong opportunity in, and then obviously our advocacy efforts, working with policymakers in a nonpartisan way to impact policy opportunities for Iowa businesses and individuals.
Yeah, it's so, and you have various constituents on your kind of the council,
We do.
education as well as business, correct?
We do. So in addition to having the CEOs of the largest companies in the state of Iowa, we also engage with community colleges, 4-year college, and then K through 12 institutions as well. And that's really where a lot of our focus has been over the last several years. If you think about the workforce crisis, quite frankly, that our state has found itself in for a number of years, how can we work with our educational partners to ensure that our talent pipeline has career opportunities, most importantly in the state of Iowa? And the way we do that is reaching into our educational communities, partnering with organizations like yours to make sure that we're all working together, all in the best interests of every single Iowan. And that's been really rewarding work over the last several years, and excited to continue that work with our great educational partners.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to have you share about these proficiencies with our listeners because it so connects to all of the work that they're trying to do within their schools as well, pre-K through 12. So let's start first. What motivated the Iowa Business Council to develop and announce this set of professional proficiencies at this time?
Well, as I mentioned, about a year and a half ago, we were looking at our data, our research data, and observing a trend where, the workforce opportunities in our state, or the desire for companies to hire more and more people, was beginning to tail off a little bit. And I think what we learned, with the benefit of hindsight, is that was a little bit of the softening in our economy, which we've obviously since experienced. But that caused us to, propose a research project to our members to really dig in and figure out, well, why is it that we're, not hiring as often or as quickly as we have in the past? Is there something that we're missing? Are we not engaging in technical skills or certain skill sets that we're just not finding in Iowa? And so we set off on an endeavor to interview all 22 of our members at the time, one-on-one with their talent teams, to ask them questions around, hey, what are you hiring for? What important skill sets do you need? We went into it sort of naively thinking that it was going to be things like AI and cybersecurity and, accounting, which is more and more important, right? And we have a lack of workforce in that area. Nursing, other medical professions. We entered it thinking it would be very specific around professions and very specific technical skills. What we learned was that across the board, almost verbatim, the answer was we need people with professional skills, with soft skills, and as we'll talk about today, we were able to sort of determine four different buckets or four different topic areas that were uniformly discussed across all of our meetings with our membership. And that was really a key unlock for us to think about, okay, what can we do to capture this information and then disseminate it out not only to our members, but to the broader public as well, so that we can talk about, this is the answer to the question, what is it that businesses are wanting for their employment base? These four skills, these four themes that we'll discuss today are really the key for that. And the great thing is, in our opinion, obviously, is that it cuts across every single industry and every single occupation up and down the employment line.
Yeah, absolutely. So how were these four proficiencies chosen? What really was the process? What did that process look like?
Well, it was an intense process. I mentioned we had 22 members, and we sat down with their talent development teams one-on-one, and we really tried to control the study really by asking the same questions in a non-leading way, just to get them talking. And across literally, 22 meetings, all separately, it was again almost verbatim discussion points on, hey, we need better communicators, we need better social engagement, we need more of a organizational and service mindset, the ability to adapt to change. Those themes really emerged very, very quickly, and we were able to immediately pivot into unlocking or learning, why is that important? Why does anybody entering the workforce need to have these skills? No matter if you're working on the manufacturing line at John Deere, or if you're in, the 801 Tower in downtown Des Moines working for Principal Financial Group, right? All of these things cut across all occupation lines, and I think that's what's really important for us here today.
All right, so let's go into each one of those and have you kind of define. So there's four kind of big areas: the communication and social engagement, organizational and service mindset, resiliency and grit, and tolerance for ambiguity and change. So tell our listeners
Yeah.
really in depth about each of those.
Yeah, so if you take the first bucket, communication and social engagement, that's really about trying to be able to clearly and professionally and directly communicate verbal and in written form across your team and directly into your supervisors, right? How can you communicate what you need for your team, doing that in a professional manner, and also being socially cognizant of the appropriate ways to engage your team members, right? It sounds silly saying it out loud, but get off your phone, engage in eye contact, say please and thank you. All of these important professional settings that I think we've kind of gotten away from with the pandemic and a whole host of other reasons are really important when you think about being able to communicate an effective message, but then also being able to communicate the needs of your customers, of your clients, of your team members to accomplish the goal that you need to accomplish on behalf of your team. And that really leads us into the next theme, which is our organizational and service mindset, right? How can you adopt a service mindset or an organizational mindset of your company in a way that contributes to the organization's success as opposed to your own individual success? It's important, and it's a good thing that we have a lot of individual ideas and opinions and things like that. Everybody takes, their own diverse thoughts and ideas to the workplace, and that should be encouraged, but it should be channeled into the goals and values of the company, right? And I think that's really important. And that's really where companies expand their opportunities and unlock future opportunities for the individual. And so, a high performer will understand that adopting that service mindset actually is better for them individually than just coming to the table with their own goals or their own ideas and pursuing those at the expense of the company's goals or missions. And so developing a long-term view of the process, understanding that, you're in a career for decades and it's not going to go by all in the blink of an eye. So being aware that that's going to take some time to develop and take that long-term view of your current role and understand that if you want to progress and be promoted or move on, which is a good thing too, it's going to take some time and you're more able to do that when you adopt that service or organizational mindset. Our third category is resiliency and grit, and this gets a lot of coverage, of course, but
Hmm.
that's really about working towards overcoming an obstacle or challenge and knowing again that it might take a long time, right? These things, these problems are complex. They're not going to be solved in a matter of minutes or even in a matter of hours or even in a matter of days or weeks. So understanding that you have to stay committed to that long-term goal while working through adversity, working through setbacks, not only is just a way of corporate life or employment in general, but it's a way of life as it is, as we all know it. And I think
Right.
that's an important skill from a personal standpoint too. And then lastly, quickly, our tolerance for ambiguity and change. If we've learned anything over the last 5 or 6 years, is that change is constant and it's going to be ever changing from here on out. And that's difficult for people, and we empathize with that. And it's important to recognize that people have sometimes a hard time with change, but how you respond to that change. Can you be resilient in the face of change? Can you tolerate change and accept that it's going to happen and use it to your advantage? And so being able to roll with that adversity, understanding that, there might be circumstances where directions or the path forward isn't necessarily clear because, you don't have all the information and in the real world, we just don't often have all the information, right? And so how can you pursue an end goal or a long-term goal in light of that reality, becoming a self-starter, working towards that common organizational goal, and engaging in leadership opportunities so that you can progress throughout your company is really what we're talking about there. So as you can see, some key themes across all four areas, working towards a common goal, working with others, clearly communicating, and again, this cuts across every single industry, every single occupation that's out there right now.
Yeah, I see so many connections in to education, and thinking about, just one example, the resiliency and grit. When you think about students, I reflect back to even when I was in the classroom, and some students, a particular topic came really easy to them, and others, it was more challenging. And do you have the resiliency or the grit to continue working through that really hard problem? Or do you just say, no, I can't do it and you're done, right?
Yeah,
So those skills to transfer over to the workplace, yeah, there's just a lot of overlap. So
absolutely.
yeah. So in your view, why are soft skills and professional proficiencies, rather than these technical skills that kind of we've thought about over kind of history and time, so important for today's workforce? And then especially when you think about Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with respect to Iowa, we need to upskill our workforce across all areas and empowering individuals with these four soft skills or professional skills will really enable that growth and that development. These professional proficiencies are really complementary to those technical skills or the hot or high demand jobs that we see right now. And again, they cut across every industry or every occupation. Everybody that achieves proficiency in these four areas will benefit, right? Whether again you're driving a long haul tractor trailer for Ruan Transportation or working in a clinic at Mercy One, all of these things are important. And I think as we think about opportunities for future growth, understanding that our population in Iowa is, not growing as quickly as the rest of the country, we really need to take care and understand that everybody has a role to play in future growth and opportunity. And, we really want to empower people to live their best life, number one, but then also make sure that they have the tools necessary to succeed in the
Mm.
workplace. And oftentimes, people who aren't as well versed in these four areas, it's not that they don't want to be. It's just that they weren't, exposed to that in the past. And obviously COVID has really knocked everybody on their heels a little bit, especially with these four proficiencies. And so really almost a re-education or a re-enlightenment on why these are so important for the business community, but obviously very important, for young students and individuals as well. If you're able to adapt to these skills earlier on in your academic career, you're going to be that much more successful in high school and community college or at a four-year institution as well.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So, as you mentioned, you already have educators, both from the K-12 sector as well as the community college sector, on your council. So, and I know you plan to partner with these institutions. So, what role do you believe the pre-K-12 and higher ed play in really taking these proficiencies, embedding them into the curriculum, and or even student supports?
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity there. And, it's really incumbent upon the business community, I think, to reach out to our educational partners. And that's part of, what this conversation today is all about, to share, what the business community needs for their future workforce. We're able to provide insights into what we need from a workforce perspective, and also then our educational partners can provide insights into the traits and the talents and the different perspectives that new generation is bringing up into the workforce. And I think the better that we can align on the long-term health of our state, particularly around workforce needs, the better. And so that's really what this is all about. How can we partner with K through 12 partners, community colleges, four-year institutions on ways to raise awareness on what these four proficiencies are? If that leads to some curriculum development opportunities, other participating endeavors to get this involved in the classroom, I think that's all the better. If we can identify areas of success and experimentation really in the classroom earlier on when the stakes are relatively low, before you get into, a paid position at one of our member companies, learning and figuring out what works well and why it doesn't work well and learning from mistakes, I think is really important. So we felt a really big responsibility and obligation, frankly, to share this information with educators all over the state. We really think that this sets the stage for us and for our partners in a long-term beneficial way that will help Iowa's workforce development opportunities.
We're pausing for a brief commercial break. We'll be right back to continue our conversation. Stick around. This school year, School Administrators of Iowa is celebrating something truly special: Iowa Public Education. We're calling it the Iowa Way: Strong Schools, Stronger Communities. Across our state, in every town, in every district, powerful, positive things are happening every single day. We're shining a spotlight on the incredible impact and success stories of our students and staff. Want to see the great things happening in Iowa schools? Read the stories, watch the videos, and join the celebration. Visit lead.sai-iowa.org/the Iowa Way today. And now, back to our conversation on leadership.
One of the things, and probably should have said this earlier, Joe, but what I appreciate is not only do you have the themes, but then you have, more of the specifics below that really help. If I think about, if I was back in a school system, how much easier that would be then to be able to go and talk with our teachers, our administrators, and say, okay, hey, here's really what this means. So here's how can then we embed that into our curriculum. So I do really appreciate the work of the council
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah, and just to go off on that, we don't pretend to have all the answers, and we have great faith in our school teachers and our professors all across the spectrum, right? And so to provide that 30 or 60,000 foot level of detail, and then enabling our great and wonderful teachers to figure out how it fits in their classroom or in their program, knowing that it varies class to class and year to year, was really important for us. And we wanted to provide sort of the baseline or the top level objectives and provide that flexibility, and opportunity for teachers to apply it as they see fit to best serve their students and their kids.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. So when you think about for students or early career workers in Iowa, how can they build and demonstrate these proficiencies even before they're out in that workforce or joining a company?
I think it really starts at that conversational level, right? I mean, I think about, the tolerance for ambiguity and change as an example, embedded in one of the bullet points in that theme, we talk about engaging in leadership development opportunities as more workers advance towards retirement in our state. We're aging in this state. There's no debating that. And our workforce is holding steady, but what we've seen and observed over time is that individuals are getting promoted more quickly, right? And so that's a really good thing, first of all, right? But what we've learned and what we found is that because we're promoting an individual earlier on in their career, they've not had the benefit of time to kind of learn in their career other leadership skills that they need to develop into to become a good supervisor, to become a good manager. And so, what sort of leadership opportunities can we develop at the school level for our students to begin, exercising those leadership muscles in this example to get them thinking about themselves as a leader and how they might engage with a team and discuss and work towards a goal. That's a real tangible example, I think, of some of the things that we're talking about. But again, if we can partner with educational systems and get into the classroom and talk about why these four areas are so important, I think that's just going to benefit all of us. Again, if we think about, we get in the business council, we get the question a lot like, hey, what do your businesses want? What do they want in the workforce, in the future workforce? I mean, this is literally the answer. Like these are the four areas of focus that our members have uniformly, unanimously said, this is what we desire in an employee. And I think that that's really valuable. In some ways, it's validating for teachers because we know that this sort of education is already going on in the classroom. We don't want to diminish that. But if we can arm a teacher to say, hey, no, seriously though, students, this is what the business community is saying. It's not just me making this up in front of the classroom. Sometimes that independent validation goes a long way to break through to individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you foresee any challenges in, kind of this buy-in, whether it's from educators or employers, higher ed institutions, that as far as that valuing these proficiencies and or adopting them?
I think there's just a lot of opportunity here. I mean, I think, the conversations that we've had with educators, all across the spectrum, they've been really excited to learn about these. I think this is, one of the first places, at least from the business community standpoint, where we've put these down literally on a single sheet of paper and say, hey, this is what we need. We know that there's great programs out there already that are complementary to this, whether it's Portrait of a Graduate or A Leader in Me or other things like that. So we have all of these things that are working in concert with one another. And then I think as the business community through the Iowa Business Council gets more engaged in these opportunities, I think that's just going to unlock more opportunities for partnership, more ability for us to work together. And I think from a challenging standpoint, we just want to be open and direct with people and be willing to meet anybody anywhere to talk about these and to share these four attributes. We think it's that important as we think about future workforce development in this state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. So how about examples? Do you have any examples or stories from either a company that sits on your council, where an employee's strength in one of these themes or multiple themes really made a difference?
Yeah, there's so many examples, but the one I like to point to is reflective in the resiliency and grit bucket, if you will. And this example might seem sort of funny, but it demonstrates sort of the unlock that we see with this. And sometimes a young person has a short attention span or doesn't know where to go next. And I think that notion of being resilient and working through challenging times and staying committed to a long-term goal or a process is easier said than done, particularly when I don't know about anybody else listening, but my attention span has certainly become shorter as the years have gone on. And so it's difficult to put in that focused effort and work the problem until it's done. But we've seen countless examples where, sitting down with a young team member in particular, maybe right out of high school, right out of college, and explaining, hey, when you get assigned, you know, an assignment from a work standpoint, or you get assigned a project, it's yours. Don't come to the manager asking for, how do I get this done? I mean, if we knew that answer, it would have been done already, right? This is now your problem. Congratulations, you go solve it. That's kind of how this works. And so that's intimidating, but empowering a young person to go out and solve the problem is really inspiring. And we've seen really good examples where, when managers explain it in that sense, like, hey, this is really important to the company. We believe in you. We believe that you're gritty enough, that you're resilient enough to solve this for us. And it might take you a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and that's okay. We don't need an answer right now, but you need to work the problem and you need to come up with a solution. And gosh, when that individual feels empowered in that way, understands that their manager is investing in their success and wants them to succeed, and then they go out and work the problem and they come up with the solution, and it works out really well. It's a really powerful moment for that individual, whether that's a first-time employee, brand new into the job, or a mid-career person like myself, right? It feels good. It feels empowering. And I think that's a key unlock to a lot of different areas and aspects, right? How do we focus in on that organizational goal, right? The long-term view of that, being resilient and gritty in that scenario where we're working that problem to completion, bringing in others, and it's going to involve communication up and down the team chain, right? And just being aware that, hey, look, you're going to reach obstacles. It's going to change probably 2 or 3 times as you're working on that problem. But when you achieve that, when you work through adversity, in this example, it's been really fun to see individuals, young people in particular, gain that satisfaction. It just instills them with confidence, and in turn, it makes the team feel that much better. And that's special. That's pretty cool to see. And it's that environment is what's really important, I think, for us to continue to unlock.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can imagine some educators would say, well, yeah, these really fit in our career technical education courses. But what ideas or thoughts do you have about taking these themes and proficiencies and being able to really embed them in math, science, social
Yeah.
studies, those, core curricular areas as well?
Yeah, there's so many examples, I think, where we can embed these all across the curriculum. Again, figuring out how to work with the team. It cuts across every sort of educational opportunity. I think getting businesses involved in the classroom. If I know some school districts have really good relationships with their local businesses, and I would encourage and challenge administrators and teachers, just as I challenge our own business members to get involved with your local school district, or from an educator standpoint, get involved with your local business and see what partnerships you can create to embed some of these standards into your curriculum, or into your practices. It doesn't have to be this grandiose sort of project. It just take, prove the concept one little bite at a time. And I think the results will really speak for themselves. Again, this cuts across every industry and occupation in our state. And I think these concepts, at the very least, cut across every single academic discipline that we see in our high schools and in our college classrooms as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, totally agree. So, do you have any ideas, Joe, on how our educators can really assess these skills within their classrooms?
I think, again, partnering with businesses, figuring out, where we can almost gamify some of these objectives, or creating real world examples of how a student might use these 4 proficiencies in their professional life, or even in their personal life, right? Again, they're cross-cutting across all aspects of an individual. I think, just being aware of these, talking about these, and really focusing in on, these are life skills too, right? They're not just professional skills or academic skills. These are life skills where we all need constant engagement on. And so, I would encourage, you can go to our website and look these proficiencies up. You can, as I mentioned before, we really try to set maybe the objective or the broad brush strokes of this, and then really encourage teachers to to run with it, right? We don't have all the answers on these, but if we're all directionally aligned in this direction, I think good things will happen.
Yeah, one of the things I reflect on as you were talking there is I think about you could have teachers as they're working within their professional learning communities or even professional learning, times that schools have, and really think, okay, what is a kindergartner? What does it look like for a kindergartner to, have that communication and social engagement? And then how does that look at that first grade level so that you could, I don't want to say build rubrics necessarily. You could,
Yeah.
but really just even having that conversation and bring that awareness to the forefront of us as for our educators too, to say, hey, this is what you'd be looking for, and this is what we could do, because it can happen in any curriculum area. So, yeah,
Yeah.
there's lots of different ways to think about it, and it doesn't. Sometimes when we think about assessment, it has to be this such formal piece, but it doesn't have to always be that. It could be somewhat informal as well. So,
I agree with that. And so many interactions are informal anyway, right? And so just understanding that, this is not a one and done sort of like lesson or assignment block, in the year, that the point or the design of these is to be embedded, across all different platforms, right? Throughout the tenure of an individual at work or in school, right? Because again, these will help everybody be successful in whatever they're endeavoring to do.
yeah, absolutely. You had mentioned about these aren't just really skills to help you be successful in your career or jobs, also for life. So,
Mhm.
anything to add to that? Because I totally agree. It's
Yeah,
your life skills.
it is, and I think, this can be applied in so many different ways. I know I keep saying that, but I think society benefits when we have really good people taking the long-term view of an issue, of an object, of a challenge, right? And then putting their best foot forward. And whether that's working towards a societal outcome, whether that's working towards, a good opportunity in your community. These sorts of notions, I think, really set the stage for a successful society. And that's perhaps a bit dramatic, but I think, again, as we look at long-term challenges that our state faces, that our communities face, it's important that people work well together, and it's important that people communicate, and it's important that people take a long-term view of a problem so that we don't have a short-term fix at the expense of a long-term situation, right? I mean, we need to think through these things, and again, you know, being resilient in the face of adversity. There's so many things that are challenging at any point in a person's life. That's unavoidable, but it's how you react to those challenging times is what sets us apart, either from an organization standpoint, as a community standpoint, or an individual standpoint. And I think that's really an important aspect for people to remember and embrace. And it is going to be difficult. And I think that that's an important thing to be honest about. We can do hard things, and
Mhm.
sometimes those things are really worth doing.
Yeah. So we all know that kind of our change that's happened, we've become more automated, right? As an economy and as a society in general, and even in our own homes. So how do these proficiencies help companies stay competitive in this kind of rapidly changing environment that we find ourselves in?
So many different ways. Again, these cut across all different jobs, up and down the employment chain, and I think, as we think about future future technology, future opportunities that companies may have, these four areas are really foundational to any sort of future success that a company may have. And so, companies are investing a lot of dollars, in programs in their own companies to shore these skills up, and we're helping our members do that. And so it's important for them to recognize that these are, success metrics for them. And if more of their employees, more of their team members, are high achievers in these four areas, the future is unlimited, right? For future growth, for future opportunity, for future innovation. And that's all happening and should all happen in our state. And so that's why I think it's so important that we focus in on the educational side of this too, so that as we grow our workforce from within, our homegrown talent here in Iowa, that they're retained within our workforce in our state, but are armed with these 4 proficiencies in a way that's going to lead to future success, not only for themselves, but for the company. And that will in turn start that magical flywheel of future innovation, future sustainable growth that will make our communities more attractive.
Yeah. Success for the state as well then.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I have taken up quite a bit of your time, Joe, and I so appreciate you introducing these proficiencies. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I would just say thank you for everything that you do for our state, that you've done for our state, and all your years of service in the classroom and in the boardrooms. And just want to thank your audience as well. The Iowa Business Council might represent some of the largest companies in the state, but we really want to engage with every single community across the state so that we can, usher in a new generation of economic prosperity for everybody. And it starts at that grassroots level. So would be more than willing to follow up with any of your members at any point in time to learn and figure out how we can work together in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
That's it for today's episode. A huge thank you to Joe Murphy for sharing insight into the Iowa Business Council's professional proficiencies and how they're shaping the future of Iowa's workforce. It's clear that when education and business leaders come together around a shared vision for communication, resilience, service, and adaptability, we're not just preparing students for jobs, we're preparing them for lifelong success. If you found this conversation valuable, consider sharing it with a colleague or leader in your network. And as always, thank you for joining us as we explore what's possible when we build strong partnerships, embrace innovation, and invest in people who power our schools, businesses, and communities. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep moving Iowa forward.